Views expressed by Casters Guild members are only the opinions of that member, and that could change from day to day. Guild members may use mature language, but that in no way means they are mature. Listener discretion is advised.
Wizards of the Coast catches some strays as their communications manager leaves the company. But what are we playing, and what are we taking from it? Well, that's the spell we're casting tonight on Casters Guild. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Casters Guild. I'm your Guildmaster Rick Perry, the leader of the Lavender Town Pokemon Gym.
And I'm your Guildmaster Baron Kane, and I feel like to be able to view the state of things in the world, I need a set of those Medusan goggles.
I don't know what those are.
So they are from the original Star Trek, and they're these cheap looking red cellophane visors that they need to use to like look at a Medusan.
Yeah, I could see how a set of red goggles could stop you from seeing several red flags.
Hey, you know what?
They're going up everywhere.
It's got to be better than those rose-colored glasses.
Yeah. I feel like it wouldn't be a difficult cosplay project if they're cheap cellophane.
That's true.
All right, Guildmaster Baron, what do we have on the docket today?
Well, not a lot. There's obviously, one thing that we could talk about to kick off everything is how are you feeling about D&D lately?
Man, are we starting the Miss the Mark segment again already?
Yeah. You know what's funny is I've been telling everybody about it, and I was like, yeah, we're jokingly like, yeah, we're going to start the Miss the Mark segment. I don't think we're joking anymore. I don't think I'm joking. I think that this is a thing that we're doing, and I might as well just jump right out the gate. We're gonna go for the Miss the Mark.
Well, first of all, and you'll probably have something more substantial to say, but my Roll20 subscription and my D&D Beyond subscription, because I paid for both a year in advance. Mm-hmm. They are both ending September 10th, so in about 6 days from the day of recording, and okay. I don't think I'm renewing either one.
I hope not. I'm not going to judge you either way, but boy, I really hope you don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a mess right now in the whole D&D world. So just so we can add to our credibility, I guess. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Greg Tito. No offense to Greg Tito, but he is the communication manager for Dungeons and Dragons. So he's not going to have a lot of impact on the mainstream view of D&D, but he did have a podcast called Dragon Talk, and it was, what you would think.
Communications manager for Dungeons and Dragons is not a position I envy.
Fuck no. No.
Like, so, if that were to be like a job posting, there is zero chance I would apply.
Oh yeah, no, that's like PR, like the PR officer. No, thank you. Nope.
It's your job to take the shitty things that we're doing and put a positive spin on it. Yep. Fuck.
God, that can you at least try to not do shitty? Okay, no, okay, all right. So Mr. Tito has very recently quit Wizards of the Coast. And he is off to work for the Washington Secretary of State office. On his way out, though, he said, quote, "It feels good to do something that doesn't just line the pockets of assholes." End quote.
Extended quote. Sorry, I meant shareholders.
Yeah.
End quote.
Yeah. So, that should really put a light onto what is really fucking with this game, and it's shareholders that are stepping in and making decisions to get themselves more money.
Unrelated and no shade, but like it feels wild to me that he goes, it feels good to do something that doesn't just line the pockets of assholes, and then goes to work for the US government. or state government, either way.
Right, yeah. Yeah, it's, it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah. But yes, what you're saying is absolutely correct. I mean, here is somebody who not only is directly involved with D&D, so they kind of have a good idea what's going on, but it's their job to put out the communications, and it is, in his opinion, obviously, that what is wrong with the game is the shareholders.
Yes, exactly. In which I think that a lot of us were already feeling that, because we knew that it was just a big money grab that was driving the direction of the game that we fucking love. I'm not going to deny that I love D&D. It has been a game that I played for years, and I love 5th edition. In fact, I probably would have gotten on board with this new edition that's coming out, except for all of the shenanigans that are going on in the background.
Yeah. And it's like we keep saying, it's mistake after mistake after mistake. And if they had only committed a few mistakes, actually committed to doing better, and like made the changes, it would have been forgivable.
Yeah.
But the thing is, they keep committing to making the changes, and then they make another mistake. And there's a certain point where you're not making mistakes. You're doing these things on purpose and hoping you don't get caught. The mistake was you got caught.
Right, exactly.
Or the mistake was you didn't spin it positively enough to where people are calling you out on it.
Right, exactly.
Because there's no way you're not going to get caught doing it. It's just that, you just thought you could get away with it and you didn't.
Exactly. And then on top of everything, and I feel like it's related to what's going on, just the direction that D&D is going, where they are, trying to release a new edition every, how many years now? 10? What? How many?
It's been 10 years between 5th edition and this one D&D or whatever they're calling it, which they're saying is not a new edition.
Which did the Pinkertons get you?
No, something fell off the shelf.
Thank God. I was like, that's it. We went too far. They sent the Pinkertons.
We complained about WotC too much.
Right. But like with all this stuff that they're doing, and again, like I said, the new edition every 10 years, the monetization, all this stuff, it's getting to the point where I feel like not this hobby, but playing D&D is going to be a status quo. So like it's going to get to the point where there are people who just can't afford to play certain aspects of the game, or even the game itself. Like maybe they'll be able to afford the books, but they can't get the digital tabletop stuff, or they can't do this or can't do that. I know plenty of people that can't really even afford a computer right now. I mean, they could go out and get a book for $50, but if all they have is digital options, how the fuck are they going to play this game? So
it's crazy that our most popular episode of this podcast is how to play D&D.
Yeah.
And one of the big things that we draw attention to in that episode years ago was you can get into the hobby for $0.
Yeah.
And that was one of the great things about D&D is that anybody can play it for any amount of money.
And I will say this. You can get into the hobby of TTRPGs for $0.
Yeah.
And just to get that blanket statement, which covers D&D, but really all that is just go back and listen to the episode, but basically it's if you have this and you have that and you know the rules, then you should be able to just go for it.
Well, even back then I pointed out that they made the starter version of the rules free.
Yep.
And that's all you needed. And so, like, even back then, you could do it for free. And they are obviously working toward making the norm of D&D that you're playing it online using their virtual tabletop. Like, that will become the default way. Whereas, before the crisis, the default way was playing it in person at a table. And then playing it online kind of became normalized because we couldn't get together and play. Right. But, after the crisis was over, most a lot of people were, I wouldn't say most people, a lot of people were going back to, in person, but Wizards of the Coast is obviously trying to make virtual on their tabletop the default.
Because they saw how much money they can make online.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like Kroger says, never let a good crisis go to waste. But basically what I was getting at, though, is I'm looking at our peers. I'm looking at the fandom. I'm looking at the people online who are going to be playing this game, these people who have disposable incomes, who are able to get this and able to get that. And then when these people want to play, and they're like, well, all you got to do is do this, and they're like, I can't afford that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just going to get left behind.
100%.
And then, even worse, you're going to have these people that are going to make them feel like shit for it.
Yeah.
And it's not, it is taking away accessibility, and I don't know. I just don't think that, obviously they don't care, but it's not being very accessible to the underprivileged.
Not at all. Not at all. But I don't think that's what they care about, because that's not the customer they're trying to grab. It's sad. You know what? There are tons of there's tons of cheap and tons of free TTRPGs out there that I have learned in the past year are just as good as if not better than Dungeons and Dragons. Go check out the TTRPG page on itch.io. As a matter of fact, I think I'm probably going to leave that link in the description.
Or you can go to our Discord, go to Geeky Deals, and I have posted a YouTube video for 27 free RPGs.
Yeah, that too.
And the video is from Dave Thomavor. But yeah, so you could just look up his page, but you could also go to our Discord and check that out. But yeah, just 27 free RPGs, and they're great. I actually got several of them after watching that video. So
we have so many games we need to play now.
So many games.
That's the thing here. This is where I think Wizards really fucked up. Is they had us all under their thumb.
Oh yeah, 100%.
They had us all on lockdown, and they fucked up just enough to get us to peek out from underneath the covers and look at what else is out there. And now that we know, it's too late. Like they've lost. And it's not like I'm just talking about me and you. There are tons of gamers who, like, this is exactly what they've done. They've branched out because of Wizards shenanigans, and now that they see what else is out there, Wizards will have lost them forever.
Yep.
And they could have kept us there.
Yep. And they're trying their damnedest. I mean, they're paying off all these YouTubers to review their products and say nice things about them.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that they're lying.
No, I'm sure everything that they're saying about the product itself is true.
Being able to get famously anti-corporate shenanigan Brennan Lee Mulligan to shill their product live.
Mm-hmm.
That was a shock to me. But
yeah, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop on that one.
Yeah, I would really like to hear his. I'm not busting down his door with ill intent
not at all
in mind, but because obviously he has a family that he's taking care of as well, and he does enjoy D&D. But I really want to know what are his thoughts behind Wizards of the Coast and what they're doing, and if he feels like his involvement is going to have some kind of beneficial impact on that company.
Yeah. I feel like he's not gonna be able to ignore it forever. A statement's gonna have to be made eventually once, NDAs have expired or whatever. But somebody's gonna bring up a question in an interview. He's gonna have to have some sort of answer. I don't know.
Yep. But let's just stick with a little bit more D&D just toxicity.
Hold on, before we move on, I was reading further on in the article from wargamer.com about Tito, moving on. And on his LinkedIn, it just confirms exactly what we're saying, why we went in this job. On his LinkedIn, he described his job with Wizards as overseeing all messaging for the D&D brand to increase cultural impact, reduce negative opinion, and drive customer satisfaction, and responding to crises.
Jesus. Oh, no. How is he still alive? Oh my god. This dude with all that gray hair, I bet he's like 22 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say when he started that job, probably had 0 gray hairs.
Mm-hmm. He would probably go into work and be like, "What the fuck, guys?" Jeez.
It's one of those it's the point where he goes into work every day and he's not looking for if there was a fire. He's trying to figure out which fire it is.
Right, exactly. Jesus.
Man. But yeah, go ahead.
Hold on. I just want to see something else because his career started as a game designer for Goodman Games.
Yep.
Wow. All right. So just to keep that toxic D&D train going, something that I saw just in the wild. I love seeing D&D drama in the wild.
Mm-hmm.
So this dude, OS Gamer 74, oh boy, which, yeah, old school gamer 1974, that, should be saying a lot right there.
Mm-hmm.
He posts this picture, and, I'm not defending D&D at this point. I'm defending a piece of fantasy art.
Right.
And they have, there's this party of adventurers. They're sitting around a table that is just filled with food. Again, they make the argument that, you must not know what Heroes Feast is. That's not the point. It being Heroes Feast is not the point. But there are tacos, and there is a sushi roll on the table.
Tacos and sushi.
Which, that should be enough right there, right?
Uh-huh.
But, he's just saying, what the fuck is this nonsense? And it's like, what do you mean? I guess you're insinuating that tacos and sushi don't belong in Dungeons and Dragons.
Right.
And believe me, there were a lot of people that decided to lump onto this guy. A lot of people jumping to his defense. A lot of backpedaling. A bunch of straying from the path to justify what was said. A lot of people stretching it to make him seem worse than what he is, I'm sure. Even though this is a hot take. But it's like, of all the things he could have bitched about, of all the stuff going on with D&D right now, I bet he wasn't anywhere when they decided to bring the Hadozi back.
No, this guy definitely, this guy was like, woo, bring back my slave monkeys.
Yeah.
Look, everybody is looking for something different in their tabletop gaming experience. And if having tacos and sushi at your fantasy table breaks immersion for you, and that's a problem for you, that's fine for your table that it doesn't have it. But if somebody else is putting out fantasy art and in their fantasy tacos and sushi exist, that sounds fine to me.
Here's a thing. Tacos and sushi exist in D&D worlds, specifically Forgotten Realms.
Sure.
There are cultures in there that are directly inspired by Latin America and directly inspired by Japan. Specifically, feudal Japan and pre-Columbian Latin America. And you can go to the wiki page, which, wiki isn't necessarily the end-all be-all to information, but they do have information taken from the books. And one of the main exports of this country was tortillas. And it's like, do you think people just ate tortillas? It's like, no. They put shit in them like a taco.
Mm-hmm.
and if you're looking at feudal area Japan, they maybe not sushi rolls, but they had sushi.
Yeah.
But then again, there are also fire-breathing dragons.
Exactly. Even if those things weren't confirmed to exist, and even if those things weren't accurate, it's like it's a fantasy world, dude. Like, you can put anything you want in it.
Right, exactly.
But Baron, you know what's a company that will never try to get more of your money by going 100% digital?
I can't even begin to think of who it might be.
tvillain.com.
Oh, yeah. T-Villain is a t-shirt site where you'll find a killer limited edition shirt being sold for $13 only while supplies last. Every Monday, the site features a new design by a new artist. We would tell you what's featured right now, but by the time you hear this, it's already changed.
They choose the most ingenious designs that reflect everything evil and villainy, as well as works pertaining to anything artistic, pulp style, lowbrow, pop culture, TV, movies, music, video games, comics, etc. All things cool and evil, basically. To check them out and help out Casters Guild, click our link in the description. All right, just walking into the guild hall is a brand new guild member who's going to be joining us for the rest of this episode. Please feel free to introduce yourself.
Sure, yeah, it's my pleasure. My name is Shane Tilton. I teach at Ohio Northern University. I do research in gaming, RPGs, and I am an avid True Dungeon player. I'm basically level 9 at this point, and I am happy just to be part of the podcast, my friend.
All right, we're happy to have you.
Perfect. Yeah, I've enjoyed it, and I've enjoyed the conversations we've had in the past, and I felt this was a great opportunity to basically talk about the things that I love, which is the RPGs, and talk about why I play. Yeah.
You know what? If you would like to talk a little bit about that, if you had somewhere you wanted to go into.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So one of the things that, sort of the reason that I like talking on podcasts like this is that it gives me a chance to talk about that games give us the capability to do two really important things. One is that it allows us to make these deep connections. So part of my other side gig is that I look at how RPGs can be used in a therapeutic set of situations. So one of the companies that I work for, Geek Therapeutics, basically has done research about setting up these 10-week-long game sessions and looked at how college students were able to use the gameplay in a RPG setting to deal with issues that otherwise they would not be comfortable dealing with. So they were talking about anxiety, depression, mood swings, inadequacies. And it's been really refreshing that what's happening now, especially with gaming, is that it is becoming much more not just serious, but it's becoming something that's part of society. So that's a great addition to most of the other ways that we view games. That they're fun, they're storytelling, they're narrative, they're interactive, things like that. So I think that's the one thing that I especially love talking about, because I think it's the least understood and least appreciated part of what games give us. They're great stories, they're great ways to escape, but they give us a simulation of ways of experiencing our world.
Yeah, I can 100% agree with those sentiments. I think we've talked about gaming as a therapy tool before on this podcast. Right. I think, as we game, we might be playing pretend, we might be creating these characters, but if you're going to spend weeks upon weeks, months upon months, possibly years, putting yourself into a character, into a roleplay situation, it doesn't matter how fantasy or how make-believe it is, you're going to end up putting parts of yourself into that character. And, as you work out things to that character, I mean, you're going to end up with some benefits.
Well, and it's kind of nice to see how people are taking sort of the different gaming systems. So if we talk about traditional D&D, or we talk about even something like Shadowrun, or something even like Forgotten Realms, that those games, there's something about the lore, there's something about the classes, there's something about the various choices that you can make that appeal to you. And that's often something that is a good conversation starter. One of the things that is important to realize is that we can be guarded about things that we feel are our weaknesses. And role-play games give us the capability to take those weaknesses and imagine solutions. So I am not an athletic individual. I will never be in the Olympics. Well, maybe for breakdancing, but I think I will. I think that will be something that I would avoid it. But in the world that my DM sets up for me, I can use my skills, and it is a combination of the mechanics of the game, the roles, and my narrative that I'm telling about myself in the game, combine those two things, and it gives you action and agency in a way that typically we just don't have in the real world.
Yeah.
So it's escapism, but it's escapism with a purpose, and that is something that gives us a foundation to feel good about ourselves. We have beat up the big bad nasty at the end of our arc, and it's given us a sense of victory. Sure, we get the treasure, we get the experience points, we get the things that are the mechanics of the game, but the underlying thing we get is a sense of pride. We've done something well, and we've done it collaboratively with our friends or the people that we care about.
Yeah, I think I was, I wish I could cite it. I was reading something the other day that there was like a study done that the same part of our brains that we use to recall things that we've done as our characters in TTRPGs is the exact same part of our brain we use to recall things that we have accomplished in the real world ourselves. And it's the same place that we're storing these memories. And when somebody tells you about the experience they've had in a TTRPG, they never say, oh, this is what my character did. They always say, this is what I did.
Right, and you have those associations. So it is, like I said, the term that we use, there's two things we're talking about that are kind of cool. The first thing is the idea of agency. Agency is, I have the ability to act in my world. Now, in the real world, your agency depends on your ability for you to make social connections, to be able to tell people what you need. It also is through your ability to get up and get what you need. But in gaming environments like analog and digital gaming, that those needs are made by the mechanics. So you are depending on the mechanics of the game, and by extension, your game master or whatever else to do something. The other thing you said was that you had a positive, the thing about positive memory. So there is an old, well, not particularly old, but there's psychological theory about that's called mere exposure. It's typically associated with media, but gaming is also in that realm. And it's just this. So the example I always use is the original Legend of Zelda game. So it has that wonderful overworld theme, the song that you hear as you are moving through the various dungeons. You build success. You slaughter the enemies. You take down the different dungeons. And by the end, you take down Ganon. And the thing that's with you the entire time is that music. And therefore, because you had a positive experience defeating the game, you have a positive experience with that music. So mere exposure also goes to different aspects. So you had a series of roles, or you had a series of successes that allowed you to do something that was impossible before. And you remember that. And it's part of your legacy, it's part of your memory, and it's also a reflection of your positive nature.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it.
And it is funny, too, that you bring up the music and stuff, because we all know, and probably are, those people who, if we are looking for something and we find it, sometimes we will hold it up above our head and go, dun-dun-dun-dun.
So that even that action becomes a really important part of celebrating success. And that, I mean, we have a history, so it doesn't matter what age you are. It's the games that you play are the aspects of life that you see that can make you successful. So one of the things that it feels like I'm kind of bouncing from point A to point B. I'm going to try to avoid that, but we could talk about something like Elden Ring or like Bloodborne, that those games that are hard, that people basically celebrate because of its hardness. And it's a level of, the only way you can defeat it is through sheer grit. And that, if you celebrate grittiness as a mechanism for success, those games are appealing and you play the heck out of them because essentially, because it's something you enjoy. You choose the games that you identify the aspects of the game that either you wish to achieve in the real world or things that you feel represent you in that gaming environment. So it can flip either way. And there's been a scholarship, I know Joe Lasky did some scholarship in classrooms about that. Typically games in a classroom setting, our mechanics are connected to learning objectives. But the other part of it is that it's basically that the things that appeal to us about games, they have the mechanics that we respect. They're part of our beliefs and values.
Baron, it sounded like you came to a realization there. Is there anything that you wanted to comment on?
No. I'm just, as he was talking, it was just like things were just being put into perspective. I was like, holy shit. Like, it's like, the games that I like I hate Elden Ring and stuff, and I've never really understood why. To me, it was just like, they're hard. I don't like my games to be hard. But then I think of the games that I do like because of what you just said, and I was wondering why I like them, and now it's like, because I like comfort, and I like coziness, and I want to achieve that. And yeah, wow.
Right, and this is old, like, game scholarship. So there's typically the 4 reasons we play, and I'm going to slaughter this wholesale because it was originally built on, like, hearts, diamonds, spades, and clubs. It was the old deck of cards. It was to socialize, to explore, to banquet, or to conquer, and to claim. So if you are more interested in socializing, the heart, it means that what is important to you is your guild. It means that you are looking to collaborate with others that, and I'm using the term care, it's just that you have some investment in them and you can achieve success because collectively you succeed. If you care about exploration, it is that it's the Pokemon component. It really, even though Gotta Catch 'em All is a conquering thing, but it's basically that you're exploring the environment. If we're talking about the idea to vanquish, it is that I'm trying to be the best in terms of getting on the top of, tournament brackets or what have you. So the idea of those, and I'm going to technically cheat because I have a device that will tell me Bartle's taxonomy of gamers. So there's achievers, explorers, socializers, and killers. I was close. So Bartle basically already sets this up. So there are things that in the mechanics of the games that we enjoy. So if we are concerned about having status, that is achieving success, exploring the world, socializing, having friends, and killers is destroying everything around us. I like playing a game because I can make little Goombas go boom.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Bartle is just class. And so I think the thing you're realizing is pretty. I mean, it's one of the. I heard the aha, and I love when I have conversations with gamers because when I have these conversations, there's things that just, oh smoke, I did not know that's what I liked, and that's something I enjoy, and I love the gaming community. I've been a gamer since I've been going to conventions since 1996. I went to Origins, Gen Con. I just came back from PAX West. I was in Seattle for a few days because, I mean, the gaming community there is rock solid, and I mean, all across the United States, it is an amazing, collaborative, and welcoming community. So I'm very happy to, most of the time, to be part of it. And sometimes there's some black eyes, but I find that there is things about it that are enjoyable, and I like celebrating those.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of shifting gears here, is there anything coming up in the gaming community that you're excited about?
I mean, I'm always excited about PAX Unplugged. That's in a few months. It is end of November, early December. That's basically where we get to see, because I mean, we just had Origins and Gen Con, so we had the summer convention season's already over. Individual games, the one thing that I've been kind of disappointed is not right, but just it's been basically like neutral, is there's not been a specific system or game that I've actively searched for. So the reason I do like Unplugged is because it is a concentrated convention that is board games, it's TTRPGs, and I think that those are extremely cool. I like digital gaming, but I like, in some aspects, the idea of the analog games because I just because of my age. But I think in terms of even like digital games, PAX Unplugged does have occasionally 1 or 2 games I look forward. I think Seattle did a massive job because I think in terms of like floors that the game developers took over, I think it was like 5 or 6 floors across the Seattle Convention Center that were just full of, I think, like 70 or 80,000 gaming fanatics, and it was a really amazing experience to see people taking pleasure in the game. So I think, walking my way back to the original answer, or the original question, I'm going to look forward till the end of the year, and I want to see in the digital and video games, digital games, I want to see a little bit more what the consoles have to offer, because I think that's where towards Christmas we see a little more of the exciting things. In terms of just branded games, I'm hopeful that there'll be something that's going to excite my interest towards the new year. But as of right now, I'm just hopeful. I guess that's the best answer I can give.
Completely unrelated, but you brought up
Perfect.
You brought up PAX, and it reminded me. I wasn't even going to talk about this on the podcast, but you just reminded me. I am a big Cult of the Lamb fan. I've talked about it on several episodes of the podcast. Cult of the Lamb developers, is it Massive Monster? Yes, Massive Monster.
Yeah. Monster. Yeah, I thought that sounded right.
Massive Monster announced that at PAX Australia, they will have a faithfully recreated version of the in-game temple at PAX Australia, and they will be setting up a wedding where two couples are actually going to get married at the Cult of the Lamb temple at PAX Australia.
Holy smoke.
Which is fantastic. And they've also announced that it's going to be at an unticketed area at the convention. So even people who haven't paid to be at the convention are going to be able to come and view these weddings.
And I think PAX really pushes the edge in a good way about those player experiences. Because I remember for the longest time, I mean, there's a series of game companies that came out. So Fortnite had at Seattle had a immersive experience. Devolver always brings their A game to PAX. They have a various and off the top of my head, I don't remember specifically what Devolver what they produced, but I know that typically the fans of Devolver games, they would show up, try to get in like an hour or two before the doors open, and they want to experience all the various, not just the games, but the environments. And I think seeing those environments in the real world is such a wonderful announcement of creativity from the developers, but also the only reason they do it is because the fans care.
That really makes sense, because Devolver is actually the publisher of Cult of the Lamb.
That's okay. That's why. Okay, right. That's why it was ringing true. So
Yep.
so that wouldn't be surprised if they were working with Australia. So one of the guilty pleasures I have with my connections, my network, is I typically get an exhibitor's badge. So it's part of, I write books, and my publisher basically gives me an exhibitor badge to show up. But I will walk through the halls before anyone comes in, and you will see these grandiose exhibits celebrating gaming and gamers in the middle of PAX West and PAX East. They have these arenas. Yes, they are the one-on-ones, they're the fighting games, but they are, you hear the cheers and the celebration across the convention center. You have those that love role-play games, find the niches in, or find the areas in these conventions and find their new loves. And I think one of the reasons that I, even being basically in the community for as long as I've been, still get excited about conventions is because you see the energy and excitement that players and developers have, sharing their stories, their talents, and the games that people care about. And I am often, and as I am right now, lost for words. It is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to bring it back to Wizards of the Coast after we already bashed on them for the first 20 minutes plus on this, but like what you were just saying, it just triggered that these people putting together, how much they put into these conventions really does show how much they care for the players, right? And it made me remember the first time I went to Origins, I want to say it was 2006, 2007. I'm not 100% sure. Editor's note here, I was thinking of the year 2017, not 2007. But Wizards of the Coast had a huge thing for Dungeons & Dragons that year in Origins. They were really trying to push the product. They were there for the gamers. They had an entire room, and it was one of the biggest rooms in the convention, almost as big as the room True Dungeon had for that year, honestly, at Origins, because that's back when True Dungeon was at Origins with like the full dungeons. They were running Adventurers League in there. They had an upper deck where they had like people who were there for press talking to, you know, Chris Perkins and Holly Conrad and other people who were there for Wizards. They hired professional cosplayers to run around as goblins for that convention. They were there. And then I go to Origins, you know, this past year. I couldn't tell you what D&D did there, if anything. And then Gen Con, they just had the one smallish booth where they were selling the new player's handbook that you had to register to get a spot in line for, and it just goes to show the attitude toward their customer, their gamers, between then and now.
Well, and I think there's a distinction in the 20 years. I think Hasbro has put their fingerprints all over what D&D has been for the last, I'm going to say explicitly, probably the last 2 years, when they had the OGL debacle. I think it was the end of 22, early 23. That just was tantamountingly bad. You had in like the late 2000s, so like you probably will talk, I think of 5 or 6, but especially 08, 09, they had those Living Realms role-play game environments, and I was a fanatic of Living Arcanus. That was my jam.
I was an avid player of Living City.
Oh my goodness! I think to this day, the paper certificate. So for those that are not from, and I don't know if you've talked about Living Realms on the podcast. It's
been a long time.
Okay,
we may, and even then, I think we've only just brought it up. We may not have gone into detail.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's set the stage. I'm going to get the history wrong. I'm going to put the phone down.
Oh, that's perfect. You're basically a member of our podcast. Yeah, totally. It's what we do here.
This is dangerous, so we're going to rock and roll with it. Okay, so talking about 2005, 2006. They basically came up with the Living Realm. So this was a partnership between Wizards of the Coast and various game manufacturers. So Arcanus, it's sort of a hodgepodge between like Roman times and steampunk and a lot of different factions. And you develop these characters, and as it got more into the adventures, you got experience points, which in a similar way is like True Dungeon. You've got experience points that moved you up to different levels, but it was just the one aspect of the levels that gave you gold and hit points and things like that. But it was those certificates that you basically carried over. And you had a tracking sheet the entire time that kept track of your adventures, what gold. You built these environments. So to go back to the point, Living City, my goodness, because that was Shadowrun, right?
No, that was Forgotten Realms.
Forgotten Realms. I should know that. Right.
It started in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and it made it through to the 3rd edition. It made it to a 3rd edition, and there was a whole mass conversion of everybody's characters, certs, everything as they switched over.
Right, and it was Living Seattle. I apologize. Living Seattle.
Yes, which I also played, but yeah.
Right, no, and I played a couple of those. But here's the punchline: Wizards of the Coast, in conjunction with partners, appreciate creativity. So I could have so much like with True Dungeon, they have the different layers that you can build up. It's the outpost, so the different outposts that you could build, and there is a storytelling. So I could buy in Living Arcanus a house. And in between adventures, I can go there, basically get my equipment, have my little dire wolf, which I think I named Blitzer because I'm not very creative. So I have these characters that I'm playing with. And when they ended the arc, because all the Living Realms kind of, the end of the licensing was the end of that.
Yeah,
I still have a sense of sadness and fondness, because that was where I feel it was the same time that True Dungeon was starting to find its footing in terms of like experience points and things like that. So you had the Living Realms and you had True Dungeon as sort of the two forefronts of these epic player communities, which Wizards of the Coast, if I remember correctly, there was a lot of connection between True Dungeon, because if you look at the old paperwork, there is references to the D&D components. And obviously, if you look at the characters, the D&D components are pretty obvious. But I think the point I want to make is that when you have environments like that, when you have Living Realms, when you have True Dungeon, and you have fan communities that are expressing their creativity, it's magical. Because gaming of that nature, role-play game, is one of the few areas that the fans can actively take a role in the game, in the media platform, and make changes and be part of it, put their fingerprints. You can't add your own lines to a movie. You cannot petition your favorite author to add a character because you want to. But as a collective in gaming environments, you can have these battles that have significance. And it's very few times that happens. Games are the primary medium that does that. The fans have the ability to impact the story in a way that no other mediums can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I gotta ask, if you weren't to recommend Dungeons and Dragons to someone who is looking for a TTRPG, what systems are you playing right now? What systems would you recommend?
Oh, I am so old school. Steve Jackson GURPS. The reason that Steve Jackson is generic universal role play system. I've been a fan of GURPS for probably about 15 years because, to me, when I was a kid, one of my favorite drinks is where you got to pour Pepsi and Mountain Dew and Sprite in the same cup. And in southeastern Ohio, we call that a suicide. It was basically take all the flavors of drinks and bring them together.
Mm-hmm.
GURPS has that feeling of, I like sort of, and I'm even going to cheat and look at what's on my bookshelf right now, because I have In Nomine, which is Angels and Demons. I had GURPS Western. I had GURPS Cyberpunk. So if I really wanted to, I could build a cyber Western that dealt with spirituality, if I felt so inclined. So I always like systems that respect flexibility. So GURPS is definitely the one. The one that I've been playing a lot more lately has been Doomtown and Deadlands, because I enjoy the CCG. I like the poker, and I know it's similar to Aces and Eights in some of the ways, but to me, I like sort of having that gothic approach to the Western that I don't think anyone else has told well, and also because the developer is a Shane as well, so I kind of have to respect that. I think that is a game that I just enjoy. So I think if you're looking for something that is structured, I can't recommend Deadlands and Doomtown highly enough, because I think it's just kind of cool. And if you're looking for something where you want to take the effort and build something that's your own, GURPS is still, is the standard. And Steve Jackson Games still supports it. So that's the two that I think I would pick up.
Yeah, the great choices. Baron, you were saying that you just picked up a bunch of new stuff. What are you looking forward to playing the most?
Oh, man. I got that game for Strange Worlds called, was it Holler?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's it.
Yeah. So, Holler, really looking forward to, and I say looking forward to playing, but, really, we all know I'm going to have to run it. I am really looking forward to Cold Ate My Baby.
Yep.
And then even the Spawn got a couple games. He got one called Wise Guys, where you are, these dudes in Vegas who are planning a heist. So, I'm looking forward to running that for him. Man, yes, you kind of brought it up and then put into perspective how much I actually got. And
actually, since you said Holler, I forgot the one thing that I tried to be good and not buy a lot this year, because, as you know, like going to conventions, Origins, Gen Con, you forget to have limitations on your wallets.
Yeah.
And money is no object, because obviously it is something you should enjoy. Old Gods of Appalachia.
Oh, yeah.
I specifically went out because I like the podcast. The gaming system is amazing. The reason I like it, because for those that are not familiar with Old Gods of Appalachia, it basically is taking sort of the mythos of Appalachia and really cranking up the gothic components of it. And listening to the podcast creates this immersive environment, almost sort of in the spirit of like Welcome to Night Vale, but less humorous than Welcome to Night Vale. And the way that they approach the gaming system is, if you're a fan of the podcast, you can bring the legacy in. If you know nothing about the gaming or nothing about the podcast, you still have these wonderful adventures that get you into an Appalachia that is much darker than is the reality. And someone also that lives in Appalachian region of the United States, yeah, that just hit all the sweet spots.
Yeah, that's one of the games I've been really wanting to play, and that price point has been pretty prohibitive for me.
Right. No, I mean, I think I paid $80 for it, but honestly, that was, I looked around the exhibit halls and I think that was Origins. That was Gen Con. I picked it up from the booth at Gen Con, and it just spoke way too hard. So that I wouldn't like. There are quite a few games that once you hit like that 70 to 140. I mean, the one that I was looking at was the one that the Legends of Avarice was putting out, but that was closer to about $100, and that was I already kind of hit my mark. So yeah, I think the other thing, and you were talking about running the games, it's also just what's your time commitment. I mean, it is very easy, as especially someone mine, to look at your bookshelf and see two bookshelves full of supplemental materials and guidebooks and rule books of stuff that you're not going to touch.
Yeah,
and that is because you got to have the players that really dig it, and I mean, if you've got friends that you've been gaming with for years, chances are your likes and their likes are at least going to be close enough that you might do a one shot in Old Gods of Appalachia. But for the $70 or the $79 price point, that's not really beneficial. And I think you can find some very nice one shot campaigns that when you have time. So my gaming group we were playing. We started in, I think, February 2020, and we stopped March of this year because we just ran out of steam. So we had a whole campaign, and this was basically the Underdark series. So it's a pretty traditional campaign through D&D, and actually it's like D&D Beyond as well. But there's a point like you just run out of steam from the campaign. And then if you want to get back together, one-shots are typically useful, and there are quite a few companies that do that. So, like, Gemhammer does a lot of one-shots that are kind of cool, and they have the cards as well. So I think that you can find that, the price points are always a problem, but I think that figuring out what are things that are affordable and playable is going to be much more beneficial.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's kind of answering the question myself. That's why I've dug the polymorph system. Like, Baron, you brought up Kobold Ate My Babies, but like, I'm looking at the excellence, I'm looking at mazes. Like, a lot of these books are not expensive at all.
No.
And they can go for one shots, they can go for extended campaigns, and as far as finding the players, it's a whole lot easier, I think, to sell players on the idea of playing this game when it's like, oh, just pick a dice. And that's the die you're going to roll the entire game. And it's just going to decide whether you succeed or whether you don't. It's a whole lot easier than trying to explain an entire rule set of a game like Dungeons & Dragons.
And Baron, you might have already mentioned this. Since you DM a lot, what are the games that you look for that you feel you can DM best? What are things that you think are really adjacent or a natural connection to your DM style?
I would say fantasy-based games would be normally what I gravitate to, but that's because, one, it's easier for me to connect to, and two, it's easier for people that I run for to connect to, because they hear role-playing and they think D&D, they've already got that set in their head. So generally I have kind of like a little thing where I will have certain games that I use to introduce people to TTRPGs. And then after that, I will gradually go into things like Cyberpunk.
Okay. So genre for you is more important than the mechanics or the functionality.
100%.
Okay. And that's why I always find that interesting. But go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I could run a game without a system.
Okay.
And
you have.
Get the same thing out of it. Yeah, I have. Yeah.
So what do you feel? So if you don't use a system, what do you feel is the areas of importance in terms of giving the player, and I apologize, I'm using the $50 word for a 50-cent occasion, but the agency, the ability to interact. Is it that they themselves can tell a very compelling story within the environment you create? So or is it something that you are cooking up some sort of mechanic that still gives the random chance?
So I will, it's mainly the story. So they will, I give them the chance to tell their character story. I will even allow them to shape the world in ways through character interaction and whatnot. If I feel like there needs to be a randomizer, then I will choose a die. And I will just think of the difficulty based off of that. And the difficulty will be based off of like what I think that this person's capable of and how hard the thing would be. So let's just say they're really, really good at something, but this is going to be really, really hard. Maybe they need a 12 on a D20.
Okay.
I will also say, like, being a player in one of those systemless games, I feel like Baron a lot of time takes, if a player says, "Can I do something?" a lot of times he takes a take 10 attitude towards it. Like, one of the old system rules is that, if something is something that you're good at, or something isn't, like, urgent, instead of rolling die, you just take 10, and if you're good enough to do it, then it just happens. And that's kind of how a lot of decisions are made. And then, if it becomes something ridiculous or something crazy, then maybe there might be a role for it. But a lot of times it's just like, maybe not this time, but like at the same time, there's also like a layer of rule of cool on top of that. Take 10, where, even if it's something ridiculous or something their character, quote unquote, shouldn't be able to do, if it's cool enough, Baron usually just says, yeah, that happens.
Okay, so that's what I was wondering, because essentially you're kind of positioning the interactive storytelling as opposed to being beholden to the mechanics. So a story master to me is much more interesting than just the D&D representation of the dungeon master, because the story is not, there is a sense of reality. You have established it in your brain what the environment is. And even in fantasy, there are the rules of the road. There's the societal rules, there is the natural order of things, the components, and you're just building off of that. And I think that's tougher, being an interactive story master, than it is a dungeon master, because dungeon master, you are stuck in the area of dice. And once again, dice are cool. Math rocks are a thing. Collecting hundreds of them is a thing, and not that I've ever spent way too much on rocks, but that's beside the point. To me, being beholden by the mechanics has some value, but it's sort of like you're stuck. So in a game like D&D, I want to do this, what do I roll? Now, I've said that hundreds of times. Mm-hmm. In an interactive story master environment, it is that I am trying to figure out, how does my character interact in the real world, in the physical components of the world you've created, still dealing with all of the societal components, and still trying to do something that is in service of an adventure or moving forward to tell the story better. And I think that's cool. I love a good interactive story environment, because I don't have to have the books with me and flip and play rule lawyer. And I find that becomes less attractive the more that I play. So that's the one. So when everyone asks me, why do I play analog? I think the two reasons are that I find it more of the environments that I'm more used to, that I love being at the table. I love seeing my friends. I love playing it. Even if the analog does go to like Roll20, to me, that's enough of a tangent that it sort of works. But the other part is that you are co-creating this experience that doesn't take thousands of dollars. It's just that your imaginations are driving this wonderful, I'm repeating myself, experience. So I think that's extremely cool.
Yeah, well, thank you. And that also goes into something that we were talking about before you got to the guild hall here.
It was hard to get to the guild hall. I mean, there was like lots of roads, the mud.
It does exist on a different plane of existence, so we get it.
It does. I mean, I tried to just shake my magic ball and try to like get a wormhole to get here, but that didn't work. Yeah.
Well, what generation of magic ball are you using?
Oh, is that it? Hang on.
Yeah.
I think it's the second. See, this is what they warned me about. I'm sorry. I should have really looked at that. Okay, I'll do it better next time. I'm sorry.
But yeah, we were talking about how D&D with all its we're going to get back into bashing them here. But fair. How they are looking to monetize everything, about how eventually they're going to make it to the point to where it is a status symbol to be able to afford to play this game. And we were talking about how it takes zero money to roleplay. Mm-hmm. And to be able to even immerse yourself in a game, a role-playing game. So it's something that I speak and walk. So it's
okay. So I think this always comes to mind. So we talk about status symbol. There's a reason that it's becoming a status symbol. I don't know if it's there yet, but it's probably close. And that is because you have celebrities that are playing this game. And you've probably already touched on parts of this, but I think and I'm not I'm not trying to come from this from a position of gatekeeping, but rather as a way of understanding, is the gaming supposed to replicate feeling a connection with the celebrities that you idolize? So that's a sort of, my friend Dr. Emory Daniels talks about that as parasocial relationships.
Yeah, I think that is part of it for some people. Yeah, honestly,
I want to feel close to Matt Mercer. So I'm going to play the games that he plays. I'm going to do the critical roles. I'm going to buy the expansions because I want to feel like I am inhabiting his world.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I would, so as a character, if I don't care about that status, I want to just experience a sense of wonder that is built on the ability to create these really cool stories. And gaming, and I think that's also changed. If you talked about role play game, it was a hard definition, and that is you had to have the mechanics, you had aspects of the story, you had to have the block text to advance something. I'm very appreciative in the last 10 years that I am seeing that less and less.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and I'm hoping that continues. So it may have that RPGs, you talk about fantasy as a genre, there's probably going to be the idea of the mechanics heavy versus the interactive story heavy genre that's going to be the landscape of gaming for the next 10, 15 years. And it's something we're going to deal with. But I think the one thing that connects us all is the love of having those experiences, even if it is not using the same tools to do it.
And you know what? I think that is a wonderful place to go ahead and wrap this episode. Shane, if someone liked what you had to say and they want to find you somewhere on the internet, where can they do that?
Well, that's a great question. Once again, I want to thank you all for having me. Find me in Silnan, Silnan, on all of the social media. I wrote an award-winning book called Meme Life, talking about how memes are these cool things. And also, I explained to my parents through my book why I study memes. So that's part of the research I do. I have a project coming out next year about talking to internet celebrities. So one of the groups that I'm looking at is Dimension 20 and Dropout, because that's the reason I can focus on parasocial relationships, because gaming as a form of celebrityism is still fascinating to me. So primary is Silnan on social media.
All right, perfect. Email us at castersguild@gmail.com. Let us know what other TTRPG systems we should be looking out for in the future. Join us on Discord. That's where all the fun stuff is happening. And we will see you in the next one. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.